There's been a resounding defeat for plans to introduce a regional assembly in the northeast of England. The people living there voted against the idea by a margin of 3-1. The government said this morning it was a big disappointment, and the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott said they'd have to think again. The northeast was thought to be the area most likely to vote for its own regional tier of government. Just under half in the region voted in the all-postal ballot. A huge majority, nearly 78%, were against the proposal, and just over 22% were in favour. Well, our political correspondent Carolyn Quinn is in Durham now. Carolyn?
Well, Darren, few will feel the impact of this result as deeply and as strongly as John Prescott, the Deputy Prime Minister. For 20 years he's nursed the idea of English devolution. Now that dream appears to be shattered. Time to part company with the No campaign's not-so-secret weapon. They'd dismissed the Assembly as nothing more than a costly white elephant, trampling the arguments of the Yes campaign.
Their campaign was bigger than ours, but ours was better. They thought celebrities shone, but we actually thought real people counted more. And our themes resonated with real people.
The region has voted no.
The emphatic result clearly dismayed John Prescott. His face said it all as he staged a news conference in the early hours.
I was surprised at the scale of the defeat of the idea, and I think there were a number of reasons for it. We'd want to examine that, certainly. But undoubtedly it was an overwhelming defeat for the proposals put before them.
But the result has brought relief to people like Durham farmer David Morn. He voted no.
I don't feel it is a wasted opportunity. I think we'll still be drawing regional funds. It means we've avoided having another structure of the government. We've avoided a costly exercise which would have been passed to ourselves, the council taxpayers.
But retailer Steve Cochrane argues that the Assembly would have freed businesses like his in Middlesbrough from Whitehall red tape.
With it being the first regional assembly, the government would have had to put a lot of effort in to make sure they got us right. So it's a big missed opportunity. People don't like change, and sadly they're not going to get it now.
The reality is it'll be 7 years before another referendum could be attempted in the northeast. Ministers are trying to put a brave face on it.
In Wales in 1979, when they had their first referendum, they lost it by an 80-20 margin. But Wales now has its own assembly, so things can change.
But as far as the No camp are concerned, the devolution idea across England has now folded for good. And Darren, there really is a huge question mark now over other proposed referendums for the North West, for Yorkshire and for Humberside.
Yes, Carolyn, you talk about that big question. So where does this leave the government plans for devolution then?
Well, pretty much up the spout, it looks like. Certainly talking to people here, people on both sides of the campaigns feel that the idea has to be now put on ice at least until the election, and probably for a good few years after that, simply because the No campaign argued that the arguments put forward by those proposing an assembly weren't strong enough. The assembly wouldn't have enough powers. Others said that it would raise the council tax. People here weren't prepared to accept that. So I think if they were to try in the future to propose an assembly again for this region, they'd have to drastically rethink how they did that. In the meantime, there are other ways that the government can regionalise policy. It can continue to devolve powers to a certain extent, decentralise powers within education and health. And of course there are those directly elected mayors. There are 3 of them in operation at the moment here in the North East, and the government would like more.